everyone. Welcome to the Beyond Identity launch live stream. I am so excited to be here today, not just because I have a wonderful panel of executives here to talk through our platform vision, but we have a very special surprise at the end of the stream, so stay tuned. By way of introduction, my name is Jing. I am extremely caffeinated right now, but also a little sleep deprived, a fun combination. I lead marketing here for Beyond Identity, and joining me here today are Jason, Lewis, and Lygia. If you would like to introduce yourselves real quick for the audience.
I'm Jason Casey. I'm the CEO and co-founder.
Hi, I'm Louis Marashi. I'm the CTO.
I'm Lygia Zaruto. I look after global defense, aerospace, and government work.
All right, thank you. So let's start with our first question and just kind of help the audience situate themselves within the context of the problem space, right? So what exactly is the problem that Beyond Identity is solving that other companies can't solve?
So I think it starts with really a thought process about root causes. What are the root causes, not of breaches, but of security incidents, right? Like not every company experiences a breach, but every company experiences a security incident, possibly many, many times a day, right? Depending on the size of the organization, the risk profile, et cetera. And how these security incidents are treated, right, detected and responded to, really determines whether that incident grows up and gets to graduate to become a breach or not. But every security incident soaks up time, and it soaks up money, and it soaks up mental headspace, and it drives energy of the organization. And so there's this interesting question of like, what is the source of these incidents? Can you bucket them? And not what's once removed, but it's kind of like, the 5 whys, right? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? Like if you keep pulling that thread, it turns out 70 to 80% of their security incidents have a small set of root causes. And there's an interesting question of, well, could you do away with those root causes? Could you change the equation? And there's this very precise language on my part. I don't mean like, can you turn the crank faster? I mean, can you simplify the machine to where there's fewer moving parts so that the thing that's being exploited doesn't even exist anymore? Like everybody remembers the Matrix, right? In the beginning of the Matrix, Neo is going to see the Oracle, and in the waiting room, there's this child monk who's like bending the spoon, and Neo walks up and he's looking at it, and the child monk looks up and he's like, the trick isn't to try to bend the spoon, but realize there is no spoon. And I can't help but wonder, like, rather than kind of treating security architecture of can we run faster than the bad guy or than the adversary, is there a Matrix style trick? Like, is the trick to realize there could be a world where there is no root cause for a large source of these security incidents? That's the thinking that really kind of got us started.
Wow.
There is no spoon. Yes. Can't bend it. That would be impossible. Yeah, I think when we look at the problem and think about to the underlying point of Jason that Jason made, we want to think about sort of full life cycle identity defense. And that's just not plug-in holes. It's completely removing, making impossible, because it doesn't exist anymore, how the identity threat surface is attacked, right? And that's what we try to do with what we build, right? Our cloud identity defense platform.
I think if I could add to that in real plain terms, for those of you who are working defensive cyber operations, offensive cyber operations, if you're coming to us from a government organization, anything you can do to collapse your attack surface is what you want to do. And just by virtue of the way that Beyond Identity tackles identity security, which I think you're going to hear about during our 20 or 30 minutes here together, you'll understand how we do just that. And so if you can collapse your attack surface, to use another sort of doctrinal piece of terminology, using the terrain to your advantage. Use what you have in the best way that you can to preserve your digital assets, preserve your workforce, and therefore improve your defensive posture. This is what we're doing today that I don't see other single vendors or maybe even combination of capabilities doing, and certainly not in the way that we approach it.
100%. I think someone I was talking to mentioned, when I think about identity, it's about giving access, right? And I thought, what an interesting perspective, because for Beyond Identity, we're very oriented towards defense, right? How do we stop the adversary from getting in? So the paradigm shift, I think, is foundational in this particular problem set. So let's paint the vision of the future a little bit, right? So let's say the spoon doesn't exist. Let's say we eradicate the root cause of security incidents. What does the future look like if that were the case, right? I know many of you have backgrounds as practitioners. Share with the audience a little bit about your vision for what that future looks like.
So at a high level, right, that future, you could put it cavalierly, like that means I can go home at 5. Or that means I could actually move on to that set of security architecture objectives that I've really been wanting to work on, but I don't have the time because I'm constantly fighting these fires. But I think we probably have to introduce some sort of definition of what is a spoon, right? We can't talk in metaphors for 30 minutes. Otherwise, no one's going to know what's going on. But the spoon in this particular example is when you think about your security incidents that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, think about secrets theft, right? A credential is a secret, right? And we all think about, we all have to deal with credential theft. But there are other secrets where the mere possession of the secret entitles the holder, whether it's a human or a device or a workload, to access a piece of service or a data, right? Now, we're talking about primary refresh tokens. We're talking about Kerberos tickets. We're talking about access tokens. We're talking about cookies. We're actually talking about anything that is session oriented and is offering up a session-based secret as a form of transactional authentication, right? When you go to log on to something as a human, you go through some sort of authentication process. Maybe it's a password, maybe it's a biometric, maybe it's a combination of that, a code or a token or a push. But at the end of that process, you're basically given a token. And the idea is every time your computer asks for, hey, let's navigate to this other page, or or update my shopping cart, you're not going through authentication again, but the system is authenticating you. And the way that's working is you're handing off this secret, right? It turns out computer systems work in a similar way across the stack, whether it's premise or cloud-based. And a lot of the security incidents that you deal with have to do with these secrets theft, right? And so when we ask ourselves, like, what is a solution to this versus what is a root cause? You'll get a lot of people that will jump to, well, we need secrets vaulting, or we need to really kind of watch how these things are used and detect. And none of those answers are wrong, but none of those answers have anything to do with prevention. And so what if you could move from a secrets-based authentication scheme to a proof of possession-based authentication scheme? And what I'm alluding to is, what if you could move from sharing a secret to actually proving you have a secret, right? So if you've ever heard of public-private key cryptography, that's exactly what goes on in signature-based schemes. If you've ever heard of zero-knowledge proofs, that's exactly what goes on through the execution of some of those protocols. But what if you could do something like that? And you could do something like that with a guarantee that the secret material, the private material, was somehow hardware backed and could not leave the device that you were working from or the workload was working from. If you cannot steal that secret, what starts to go away? What incidents truly are not or no longer possible? And there's 2 or 3 other kind of identity related root causes, but that's kind of the foundational one. What if you could really attack these secrets that move? How would that change the defensive area that you have to manage? How would that change the incident rate or the incident load that you have to deal with? What would that let you work on or think about next?
Yeah, I mean the credentials, the spoon, right? Or it can't move. It's gone. It's poof. I think the other thing that you have to think about is that the identities, the landscape and the threat surface is growing. And if you rewind, we used to think about point of access authorization, you're in, or your authentication, you're in, poof. We'll see you in 12 hours, we'll see you in 24 hours, or whenever that token that I just gave you expires. We live in a world that's complex, in a world that you aren't and can't trust what you see and hear, right, anymore. You can't do it. Those are all fundamental identity problems. You have to continuously authenticate, and you have to continuously check that that device, that workload, that human, that agent, whatever identity is interacting with your valuable, critical, sensitive digital assets, is authenticated, authorized, safe, and that you actually want him, her, or it there. Attackers aren't going to sit around and just not exploit this new threat surface that's popping up overnight, right? They're already exploiting it. And if your identity security strategy, right, if you're not thinking about how you can protect that, then you're already behind. But more importantly, if you're not thinking about how you can shrink that threat surface, then you're way behind, right? And so it's the continuous authentication, right? The continuous evaluation. That's, if you're not doing it continuously, you may as well almost not be doing it in the future, right? The future is continuous. You have to do it continuously. And we strongly believe that. It's built into the platform and what we do.
There's another couple things I think that the future looks like if beyond identity and our approach wins. The first of which is you're not searching for a cat card or a random hardware token to complete login to your daily, multiple times a day accessing of your applications or whatever it is that your digital workday looks like. So we eradicate the need for that. The other thing that the future looks like is post-breach and post-breach analysis. When that report comes back from your IR firm or whatever you have to hand over to your cyber insurer, phishing emails are not going to be the reason that the breach occurred. And, all it takes is a statistical look at, the best of breach that has occurred over, I would say, the past decade, and how much of that falls back on, some otherwise diligent worker that was tricked by an email. I think probably everyone on this call today has been victimized by that at some point in time in their life, and it's only getting more sophisticated. So in the future, that goes away too. So those are two things I think that are tangible that each of us can imagine in our day. We're not carrying around access cards. We're not carrying around tokens, physical or otherwise. We're relying on the terrain that we already have.
Yeah, that's right. You even today, but definitely in the future, you can't ask your humans to be perfect. No
Right.
human is perfect. They'll never be perfect. Eventually, someone's always going to click the link. Eventually, it's going to happen. And so if you have a threat surface, that means when that poor human wakes up at 3 a.m. and clicks the link or authorizes the push notification or whatever it is, if that lets that attacker in, then you've failed to adapt to the future, right? And the best way to eliminate, or the best way to solve that, is to just eliminate the possibility entirely. It just can't happen in our world.
Right.
So just to double down on that, right? Like the key question is, how do you know what's real? How do your people know what's real? And, social engineers are going to spider all over the surface of whatever you end up deploying. So if you really want to pull that thread on root cause, what is the root cause exploitation that's actually happening? Whether it's a phishing link through email, whether it's a phishing link through a Slack message, whether it's a phishing link through a text or a chat or a QR code, right? There's many, many ways, or actually a phone call with some sort of social compulsion to do this thing. So what is the root cause here? We're kind of depending on people to exercise judgment over something that's highly, highly technical, and even experts struggle with without actually breaking out the math and asking themselves, well, wait a minute, does this formulation truly have the properties that we expect? And so if you really want to address that root cause, you've got to have a solution that's not just guaranteeing secrets don't move and isn't just being continuous, but is also taking the choice out of the hands of the human of are they even interacting with a legitimate service?
Yeah, that's right. This is, I think, a really generative moment to kind of double down on the fact that there is a real human cost to cyber defense, right? Both for the end user, who currently is heavily burdened with the task, the impossible task of figuring out what is real. Can I click here? Is that real? Is that really from HR? Is my CEO really asking me to wire $1 million? Is that actually happening? And then on the other side, the human burden, I think, Jason, you might have said this in the beginning, of like the real tax on security operations, security response, to protect their environment, but also to run down exactly what happened in terms of root cause, right? So I think in this conversation, we can't really get away with not talking about the ginormous elephant taking over our world, which is AI, right? So you can't see it, but it's there. So how does AI change and accelerate the threat landscape? And then I guess, how does Beyond Identity enable customers to stay ahead of this particular flavor of an accelerated threat?
So there's a couple things here, and so one I want to put a pin in, and let's come back to. But we need to make sure that we come back to the root cause of the over compartmentalization of both IT and security architecture and IT and security operations, and why when things truly matter, that tends to not happen, yet we still build architecture and infrastructure that does this. And that leads to problems too, and we should pull that root cause thread. But on the side of AI, at a high level, AI is an accelerant of the problems that we already know. Whether we're thinking about an AI-enabled adversary, or whether we're thinking about our own developers and users building out their own custom workflows or agentic workflows. So what do I mean by that? So an AI-enabled adversary is an adversary who's going to be able to write even better phishing links. They're going to be able to look like you. They're going to be able to sound like you. How do I know if this is real, right? Also, you have to realize that we're going to live in a world where it's not just permissive, but encouraged for everyone to be using AI in their work. You can't tell that I was kicked by a horse this weekend, can you? This real-time AI touch-up is working pretty well. By the way, you didn't know I don't speak English. The real-time AI translation is working pretty well. So how do you even, is it even the right question to ask, right? Is this really Jason? Is this really his voice? Does he really look like this? So when you pull that thread, there are questions that get back to, well, maybe that's not the right question. Maybe the right question is, did Jason authorize this? Is this coming from Jason's device? Is this coming from a set of things that we know Jason is bound to, right? Is the software that's actually communicating on the other side, is this actually a Chrome browser? Or is this a Python script piping a bunch of things out to a bunch of other processes I have running, basically shipping off access tokens? It's a slightly different question. When you think about agentic AI, it's going to accelerate, if any of you are familiar with the problem of key sprawl, right? You've got a bunch of devs, they have SSH keys, they copy their keys all over the place. All of a sudden, where are all the keys? I don't know. Let's flush everything. Now people can't get to work. I'm certainly not going to home at 5 now. I may be at home if that's my job, but I'm certainly not leaving my home office to go actually enjoy time with the family. Agentic AI is interesting, right? These agents are going to show up. They're going to be born. They're going to do a thing, and they're going to die. And a security incident is going to happen, and none of the agents are going to be around after the fact, right? So, how do you piece things back together? And so, again, these agents are really going to take problems that already exist, which is, well, who authorized this? On behalf of which person? What's the workload that's actually running? On what computer? With what security controls in that moment? With what fine-grained permissions and for how long? And maybe in what geography, right? Those are kind of classic questions. How do I answer those questions under the dynamicism of agentic workloads, right? Because a workload's going to poof, be born, do a thing, and die. And so yeah, agentic stuff is basically going to accelerate the problem. There's other AI problems we can kind of dive into, but the problems I would argue are like classic. And if you're not really thinking about root causes, you may apply some duct tape that you've previously been using for this problem elsewhere. But you're either going to slow down your org and develop a disadvantage compared to your competitors, or you're going to rip it all off and say, devs, do whatever you want, and you're going to blindly accept risk, right? So how do you actually get at the root cause of why do I not have something that can follow the pace of this new dynamic application, but still give me things where credentials don't move, where I still have proof even when the machines are destroyed and the agents have died after the fact, so I can run a proper investigation. Anyway, I could go on for quite some time on this, but the problems are the same. They're amplified at 100 to 1,000x.
Yeah, I the one that really freaks me out as an individual and as a dad, and that really be freaking out every single business leader, security leader in the enterprise, is the fact that you can't trust what you see here at all anymore. Unless you can physically touch it, you can't trust it, right? And the fundamental identity problem of, to what Jason said, is that really him? I mean, unless he was sitting in the room with me and put my arm around him, I can't know, right? And so how do you build into your identity substrate, right, into the life cycle of your identity defense strategy, a way to have proof that even though I can't put my arm around Jason, I can prove that he authenticated to the device, and the process that's sending me that video is signed, and as good as you can. If I'm trying to detect it, it's a losing battle, right? And so that future world is a scary world as an individual. It's a scary world as a business leader, right? Everybody should be scared because you can't trust all the foundational elements on which we built like this kind of leaky trust system are gone, right? They're just gone. And you have to have provable identity security. If you don't have provable identity security as the foundation of your identity defense strategy, all you're going to see are holes popping up across your threat surface, across your organization. And the flip side, if you try to shut all this down, you're just going to basically be the equivalent of unplugging from the internet. You just put your business at a disadvantage. Can't do that, right? So you have to fundamentally change how you approach it.
Maybe another thing worth mentioning, AI, just by virtue, of what it is, artificial intelligence, it seeks to mimic us. It wants to behave like us. And this includes threat. And that's as old as time. Threat wants to look legitimate. They want to behave like legitimate users so they can get into wherever they want to get into. And again, the reason it needs to be beyond identity in our approach is because we don't rely on methods that are repeatable or could be replicated by AI. And by that, I mean removing passwords, one-time passwords, codes, multi-factor authentication pushes, all the things that a human is liable to fall for. Our authentication methods make that non-replicable. It's just not possible. And so I think this also gets into that even if an adversary were to compromise a device, let's say, they can't continue to extract a credential and push elsewhere in the network and impersonate a legitimate user. It's just not possible. And so I think that's real important to hone in on, why it's different. How do you combat AI? It's, you can't mimic what you don't have. And you can't have that credential. It's bound to the device. It's not something you can fake your way through.
When you have hardware-backed identity, it forces the adversary into new behaviors. So let's pull that thread like you just laid out there. Let's assume a compromise. Let's assume the adversary is going to enroll into a system like ours, a device-backed or hardware-backed identity solution. At that point of enrollment, the adversary has a choice, and they have to do one of two things. They either let that enrollment happen on real hardware, in which case something called attestation happens. And there's essentially a provable audit trail that's generated in that moment that helps us track that hardware back to a mutable record of what silicon foundry did this actually come from, right? That's not something that you can actually fake. And this isn't, you don't have to trust us for it. The US government and Microsoft use this technology at the core of something called Secure Boot, right? It turns out, for whatever reason, no one really uses it beyond those capabilities or beyond those use cases. And we saw that as an opportunity, but that's another story. So the adversary can do that, or they can drop us in a VM. When they drop you in a VM, attestation shows up empty. In your organization, you have an expectation of where people work from. You have an understanding of what devices have either been handed out or used in the past. So you immediately have an inventorial record difference, or you have the absence of evidence of like, hey, this person who's never worked in a VM is now like just enrolled a VM. Something interesting is going on here. Here's something else that's interesting. When you have a device-backed credential versus a shareable credential, you're creating this implicit binding between the user process and the device. And that may sound obvious, like that wasn't that in the title of what you just said. But think about it. When you know a session is compromised, a session token is compromised, you don't actually know what device you're dealing with. You draw a blast radius around a collection of devices because there's nothing inherent about this technology that tells you about the device. When you have a device-bound, hardware-backed credential, you know exactly what device you're talking about. So now that you know exactly what device you're talking about, you know exactly what device the adversary is on. And in a system that's doing this continuously, you have some ability to actually interrogate that device in real time. You have an ability to actually force the adversary kind of into the space of your control, into the space of your ability to observe, into the space of your ability to respond. And that actually changes the playbook quite a bit.
That explanation is one of my favorites for taking Beyond Identity's capabilities and using them in incident response, and quite frankly, for proactive defense and hunt teams. It's sort of a nuanced way to use Beyond Identity, but it's a way that we have seen, in our deployments, and I think it's fascinating as it relates to new capabilities for people who are working these problem sets.
One more thing I forgot to mention, and another thing that's not obvious when you move to this world, but in the legacy world, when you have this token, you're authorized. So there really is no distinguishing. There's no distinguishing moment between who's authorized to get the token versus who's authorized to use the token, because you can't distinguish those cases. In hardware-backed device-bound credential, you can distinguish those cases. So now you can do things like, I'm going to be permissive and let folks enroll, because just because you're enrolled doesn't mean you have access to anything. And I can be really restrictive on the usage of these tokens, these hardware-backed tokens, to access things, maximizing visibility and control of what's actually going on. Like, that's another kind of nuanced thing that once operators really understand, they actually start writing access policy very differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed. I think one of the interesting things about working for a cloud-based SaaS startup is once you build the foundational platform, how customers actually apply your technology can be very surprising and very nuanced. And then from those applications stem additional use cases, right? And I love what Lygia said, mimic legitimacy, right? We make it so that a human, a machine, or an agent, it doesn't matter what the identity is, it cannot mimic legitimacy through our device boundedness, continuous access controls, as well as the deep posture that we're able to provide. So this was a really fantastic conversation. Is there any sort of lingering last thoughts that you'd want to leave the audience with, or that you just want to highlight, or the term of the art, isn't it like double click on or whatever it is?
So I would say there really is this this higher level concept of when you think about defending an organization, right? And I like to go back to the NIST framework because I think it gives you a good framework, right? Like, what do I have, right? Identify. How do I harden it, protect? How do I detect bad things that may be happening or suspicious things that may be happening? How do I respond? And, after the fact, who do I call and how do I, rebuild the kitchen after the fire? A lot of our energies as an industry have really been focused at the back half of that train, right? We spend a lot of time and energy on detection, response, and repair. Are we always thinking about the beginning of the train, right? So for instance, it's a lot cheaper to fix a bug on the whiteboard than it is in production. It's a lot cheaper to fix a security incident by preventing it from ever happening than chasing it down and dealing with it. And we've spent as an industry a decade chasing detection and response. And maybe we've just kind of become a little calcified and haven't poked our heads up to realize that in the last decade, this capability that we describe, it pretty much exists on all modern electronics. Is there a better way? Because if I could focus on the front, right, identify and protect, and actually prevent these things from ever happening, it's cheaper, it's less time, it lets us focus on other things, it lets us actually focus on more advanced scenarios that may actually benefit us. And so I guess my parting thought really is, what is actually preventable at the root cause that I'm spending a lot of time and energy on detecting and responding to? And what has changed in the last decade that no one really has kind of taken advantage of, that maybe is just new and I could take advantage of now and really kind of change the equation? Rather than solving this super complex math equation, maybe I could simplify it in some way and turn it into just adding two sums, right? Because it's a lot cheaper to add two sums than it is to solve a partial differential equation.
Some more differential equations. He probably has a PDE book on his desk over there. I'll be a little more direct and just say that, look, risk is dynamic. It's a dynamic threat landscape. Attackers are always trying to find new ways in, and identity now continues to grow in terms of what it's covering, right? It is the front door, and that door is getting bigger, if you will. And if you're not continuously authenticating, if you're not continuously evaluating whether that device, that user, that workload, that agent is authorized to do what it's doing in the moment in time, not when it starts, but continuously as it evolves, and tracing all the way back to the full context of where that authentication is being requested from, right? Like what device, the whole context around it, the environment around it. If you're not thinking about this in those terms, then you are, quite frankly, thinking about the problem in a backwards looking way, right? Because it's comfortable. And the future is going to be very different. And it's changing very fast. And identity, and maybe by definition, since it is that front door, is changing just faster than everything, or is changing first, if you will, right? So that's what I would want folks to really start to try to internalize, is that this dynamic kind of risk world requires continuous authentication and continuous authorization.
I think I'll finish by saying I'm super fired up because I'm confident that beyond identity and our platform, our capabilities, we are giving defenders, analysts, security architects, CISOs an option to jump in the kill chain way earlier, maybe than they ever have before, with something that confidently addresses something that is a page one issue, I would say, for any organization that has any digital assets and humans working for it. And so because identity is the cut of the network that allows you to see everything, we didn't get in that too much today, but if you really want to know what the threat's doing, pounding at your door, identity and that stack is where you're going to see it. And so I think what I'm excited about is we're finally bringing an option that is hardware bound and nearly fail-proof with some security guarantees that we're really confident about, and we have use cases to prove it. And I'm super excited to continue to push this into the market in all directions.
100%. I think just in this conversation alone, I feel very invigorated about what we're doing, about our vision for the market. I understand, of course, we're all beyond identity or beyond identity. Beyonders. We're all beyonders here. And so for those of you in the audience who are thinking, that sounds too good to be true, but how do you do this? My environment is specific. I'm very, very special, and every environment is very special. Hold on to the skepticism, right? You work in security, but also be curious enough to rethink about your approach to the problem. Dare to do identity differently. And if you have questions, concerns, or just things you want to poke at more, you can find all of us on LinkedIn. You can also find Beyond Identity at beyondidentity.com. Who knew? And we'll all be here to answer any of your questions and address any edge cases or lingering concerns in your minds.
There was a huge attempt on authentication via Okta across about, give or take, 200 user accounts. And we looked through the logs and we identified that they hit a brick wall when they hit the MFA through Beyond Identity, and they were not able to authenticate. My name is Duke. I am Senior Director of Corporate IT here at Thalia. My role here encompasses managing 3 teams, specifically the IT team, the Salesforce development team, and security operations team. We at Thalia provide working capital management for Fortune 500 companies. And so in terms of electronic invoicing, dynamic discounting, AR financing, and inventory management. Password is a big vulnerability in identity. If someone can get someone's password, then you have a way in. There's always MFA, but then that's always can be compromised. Also improving user experience, because when you're constantly typing in password, it becomes a little annoying, and that also a lot of errors. So we want to reduce that, so also improve user productivity in that way. When we evaluated Beyond Identity, we did evaluate Hyper and Duo. It was more of a push and allow users to authenticate without a passkey, and we wanted to avoid that. We wanted to make sure we have device posture, what devices are logging in. So overall, we felt Beyond Identity was the best solution in terms of passkey and reducing MFA fatigue and overhead in terms of management. The benefits of Beyond Identity is it's passwordless passkey authentication. So it's integrating with Okta, ease of deployment, ease of users to be able to enroll the devices, anti-phishing because there's no password involved, frictionless for our users. In the morning, they wake up, they type in their username, and then they just authenticate using Beyond Identity, using their fingerprint or a PIN without having to type in the password. And it's a much more seamless and frictionless process for our users. And then it improves our security posture. And then we have logging into every single authentication. So it addresses security and improves user productivity. It saves employees time. Since we implemented Beyond Identity and my tenure here, we've had 0 security incidents relating to user account compromise, relating to passwords because of Beyond Identity MFA. Last year or the year before that, we had an incident that triggered a security alert. There was a huge attempt on authentication via Okta across about, give or take, 200 user accounts. And we looked through the logs and we identified that they hit a brick wall when they hit the MFA through Beyond Identity, and they were not able to authenticate. We estimate that each employee saves about 10 minutes in typing passwords or having password issues a day. And then with 600 headcount, we calculated that to be 1,800 hours a month, or 75 days that the company saves on user time on passwords. Often when you implement security solutions to improve security, that often causes more friction and more frustration. And with Beyond Identity, that actually is not the case. It actually is the opposite of that. It reduces friction while improving security. And that is a win-win for every organization.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a Beyond Identity platform demo stream. So my name is Jing. I lead marketing here. And with me are three wonderful weight-bearing individuals who work for Beyond Identity. I guess I'll just start with Nikhil. Say hi to the audience.
Hey everyone, so excited to have you all here as part of our live stream. As Jing said, my name is Nikhil and I lead the product team here at Beyond Identity. I'm excited to show you a quick platform overview and also deep dive into some of the features we have coming out in the near term. With that, Harry, I'll pass it over to you.
Hey, what's up? My name is Harry. I'm a software engineer here. Been at Beyond Identity for about a little bit over 4 years now, and I currently work on our AI defense product. Off to you, Colton.
Hey, Colton here, product manager. Today I'll be showing you a little bit of how we view the intersection of AI and identity and access management.
Yeah, for sure. So you probably noticed that there's a lot of talk of AI, but it is in our belief that in this era of cyber warfare, identity is not just the perimeter, but actually the primary attack surface. And it turns out it's not just users, human beings, biological beings that log in across the world, right? AI agents act on behalf of human operators, machines and workloads function autonomously, and then a deepfake generator can mimic your image and voice in seconds to beg your finance team to wire over $1 million or whatever it is, right? So Beyond Identity is built to power this future, right? We deliver an identity security platform that can actually eradicate the root cause of security incidents. So I am actually going to pass it over to Nikhil, who is going to kick off the actual demo of the platform so you can see how that looks like.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Jing. I do have to kick it off with one slide. If we could load that up here for me. Awesome. And so, diving right in, when we look at the number one cause of breaches, every incident, time and time again, you read any threat report, any Verizon DBIR report, breaches and incidents begin with initial access, either compromised credentials or insecure devices. And when we think about holistically, where you should spend your precious time and resources, it should be securing your identity infrastructure. And so what I'm really excited to, just briefly touch on today is how Beyond Identity's unique approach to securing your identity infrastructure allows you to make sure that only verified users and secure devices are able to access your critical resources. So if I could switch gears to the actual demo screen, fantastic. So what y'all see here is what we like to call the Beyond Identity Universal Login page. And you can see here that I'm about to log into this Beyond Identity demo tenant as an administrator. And what's actually happening here is at this point in time, Beyond Identity is actually checking the posture of this device and stepping up to use biometric verification factors to verify who I am before I'm able to access this Beyond Identity tenant. I'm just going to dive right in and give you some of the cool capabilities on our differentiated approach. The way Beyond Identity starts is we require customers to install our Beyond Identity Platform Authenticator across their managed and unmanaged devices. And as users and companies enroll in Beyond Identity, immediately we are able to give IT and security teams a full visibility into all of the devices in their environment, either managed or unmanaged, that are critical in the access path to access their resources. And so right off the bat, you get a full view of the devices that are important for you to know about. Now, our secret sauce is that we actually tie that user and device information to access. And so, what I want to bring your attention to is just about 30 seconds ago, I actually logged in to this admin console. And when you look at what allowed me to actually log in, I can come in, look at this policy evaluation, and you can actually fully see all of the attributes that I had to pass that allowed me to gain this secure access. So as you can see here, I was only allowed to access Beyond Identity by verifying that I stepped up with the biometric factor and my device was healthy. You can see that this device had all of these key attributes about CrowdStrike to be passed before I was able to get access. And so, as you can see, Beyond Identity enables this secure access to resources, not only at time of access, but on an ongoing basis, on a continuous basis, making sure that your access to resources is healthy at time of access and on an ongoing basis. Now, to close that loop, right off the bat, there's a whole host of things that Beyond Identity can check by ourselves. We also partner really well with your entire cybersecurity investments by ensuring that we can consume device risk signals from all of your EDR, MDM, ZTNA tools, as well as stream this information out to your SIEM tool. So with that, Jing, I'd love to pass it over to you if you have any other kind of cool capabilities you want me to highlight. But this is just a quick taste of how Beyond Identity enables secure access to resources and eliminates identity and device-based threats.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I think you covered 3 of our core differentiations, right? One is a device-bound identity. It's a device-bound credential, it's hardware protected, and actually passwordless is a side effect of this, right? There are no shared secrets, no exportable or synced tokens, and that means no passwords, and it turns out a better user experience. And then, of course, you touched on the deep posture and then the continuous authentication piece, where we really deliver a complete runtime defense. So I would love to get to the second component of our platform and pull Harry up to the stand here, because Harry actually built something called Reality Check. And sometimes when I'm being dramatic, but I'm kidding, but not, right? Sometimes I describe Reality Check as it's not just a feature, right? It's actually a sanity layer for a world in which anyone or anything can actually pretend to be you and act as you. So how do you know who you're interacting with, right? And originally this came out of some customer asks for us to extend our secure access controls. So without further ado, Harry, could you please show us what Reality Check's all about?
For sure, Jing. All right, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an overview and a demo on Reality Check. So before, let me lay the scene for y'all. So the next emerging threat in cybersecurity is generative AI and deepfakes. AI systems, make those funny videos that you see on the internet, I'm sure, but they can also be used to impersonate someone both through audio and video of figures in real time. And the thing is, the attacks are here now. I highlighted some of the biggest cybersecurity threats revolving around deepfakes. We've got a Roop where over $25 million was transferred to adversaries using deepfakes of executives. There are some celebrity deepfake scams in the US and Spain where deepfakes of celebrities were used for investment scams. And even KnowBe4, the whole phishing company, they got scammed by a North Korean threat actor using a deepfake to onboard onto their company. And this is just one of the many, many deepfake attacks out there. And so what sort of existing solutions do we have today? Well, one, you have end user training, but we know that's ineffective and lags behind the threat landscape. You can't expect your end users to tell, what is a deepfake versus what is not. And also the other method is detection. However, it is probabilistic. Like even some of the best deepfake detectors out there are not 100% accurate. And we believe it's in an arms race with the AI generation itself. As the generation gets better, the detection will get better, but the vice versa is also true. As the detection gets better, the generation also gets better. So let me talk to you about reality check and how we defend against deepfakes. So building on top of what Nikhil said, the things that we provide are ensuring your users are who they say they are using strong, phish-resistant MFA, and that the device is compliant and meets your security requirements. So we believe by strongly verifying the identity and device and providing a visual indicator of this on communication platforms, you can tell who is verified and unverified. We've kind of used these threat models, if you're in a call with a bunch of deepfake executives and you need to prompt every single person to authenticate themselves with reality check, that's how you establish trust amongst all the members of that conference. It's currently available for Zoom, Teams, and we have much more platforms upcoming. So let me go into a little bit of a demo here. So this is actually Kasha, our product managing marketer that is actually running the live stream behind the scenes right now with reality check right now. So this is our reality check extension for Zoom, and I'm going to do the same. So there's my authentication window. I'm going to authenticate with my biometric as well as, so I verify my biometric as well as the device-bound passkey that Nikhil was talking about. And look at there. We are both now verified with reality check and we can trust each other on this call. And I just want to show a quick demo of Teams as well. So the cool thing about Teams is not only is Teams used for meetings, but you can also chat and have channels as well. So the same thing goes, say I'm in a channel with some people and I want to make sure all our communication is secure and everyone is authenticated. I can do the same thing, authenticate with reality check. Go back. And I can see that I'm authenticated. No other participants are in this channel right now, but as you can see, as the number of people use this platform scales, then you want to make sure that any communication, especially for those with like financial transaction or sensitive data, are secured. Yeah, so back to you, Jing.
All right. Thank you so much. Reality check has been really fun, and just kind of like watching the product extend beyond our initial use case of Zoom to more collaboration tools has been really interesting, and customers are responding very well to it because, I think it turns out people want to be protected where work happens, right? So, this is when I want to transition over to the last demo that we have for you today. So Harry basically showed us how Beyond Identity protects against AI that is against the enterprise, right? Like this is adversaries trying to trick you and your employees into doing something for financial gain for them, right? But then the question becomes, what about AI for the enterprise? I love AI. We love AI. I think at Beyond Identity, we have 4 different AI Slack channels because we're just very gung-ho about it. But it turns out the efficiency promises of AI has to be checked against the security attestation and security controls because agents, by definition, do things, right? They behave and act on behalf of the user. So Colton here, who is our resident mad scientist in-house, has built out this demo to show how Beyond Identity is approaching agentic identity and access control. So without further ado, let us know what you've got.
Sure. So I think the biggest change we're seeing is the use of probabilistic systems in enterprise workflows. So that's basically today, like using a chatbot, you could give it the same question and it'll give you a different answer every time. Now, I think it's important to remember that you shouldn't be using probabilistic systems to make access decisions. So in this demo, I'm going to be showing you, we sort of like imagined what would an enterprise grade chatbot look like that had applied beyond identity security controls at login and for every transaction that takes place inside of the agent. So I'm going to just run through this demo real quick. First thing I'm going to do is just sign in. Looks like your typical sign-in page. So we sign in and we're checking the security posture of the device to see if we'll allow the user in or not. So we continue to the chat, and let's say we're logged in as marketing team and we just want to start a new chat. So you'll see up here that this agent is always keeping track of the user's device security posture as the user is interacting with it. So I could do something like, what is the capital of Texas? And it will tell me what the capital is. But let's say the security posture of the device has sort of deteriorated, like the firewall has been disabled since the user has logged in. So let me ask it, what is Texas climate like? So because the firewall is off and we have not passed policy, we're basically saying you're not allowed to access either this LLM model or a document that you're trying to access. So if, let's say we turn the firewall back on and we can try that again. You'll see the device posture has changed. So that's sort of like showing that every transaction you make in the chatbot is being authenticated and authorized by Beyond Identity. So what are some of the type of transactions that happen inside of an AI agent? Well, a common one is just like document retrieval. So let's say you're on the marketing team and you want to ask something like, what are the Q3 marketing plans? So it's going to go retrieve a document that matches what the user has asked for, that you can see here. You'll also notice that this document is tagged with marketing team only. So what we've done here is applied some role-based access controls to the document storage inside of the AI agent so that you can write policy saying which team members have access to what documents, what LLM models they're allowed to chat with, what documents they're allowed to chat with. And if I log in as, let's say, engineering at BI, and I'll start a new chat. What are the Q3 marketing plans? You'll notice that it doesn't pull the Q3 marketing plans that were tagged for the marketing team. And this is just an example of using deterministic access controls inside of the AI agent before the probabilistic LLM gets invoked. And I think another cool thing to share here is the auditing capability. So we go into our admin console and we check out the audit logs. You'll notice that every transaction inside the system, whether it's a login, a logout, a chat message was sent, a document was accessed, maybe a tool was called, like an MCP server, all of these transactions are authorized using Beyond Identity. So you can see that for this one, the device security check passed and the user was allowed to do something. So that's pretty much just a demo of using our APIs and SDKs to like build what we think an enterprise grade chatbot should look like. And
I'm back. Oh man, that demo is always so fun, and I think you add a little bit here and there every time you do it. But I did feel personally attacked with the marketing team having suspicious devices. But that's all right. I'll work on it. It's all right. We'll make sure my device is good. So I just want to wrap up here, right? You spent some time with us seeing how our platform works, from access to integrated security controls to how we protect communication tools with a visualized version of our product called Reality Check within those tools natively. And then finally, we saw how Beyond Identity is aiming to protect enterprise AI use. And ultimately, at the end of the day, enterprises today, y'all face a lot of challenges. There's credential stuffing, lateral movement, deepfake-driven social engineering. And the problem is none of the traditional SSO identity tools are able to stop these challenges, primarily because they're architected to actually let people in and not to keep attackers out, right? They trust credentials that can be stolen, sessions that can't be hijacked, and devices that ultimately can't prove their integrity. So with Beyond Identity, we really flip the script on its head, because every identity, human, machine, or agent is verified. Every device must be compliant, and every session is continuously evaluated for risk, right? Because identity ultimately is your first control in cyber defense and your last line of visibility when everything fails. So if you're interested in how Beyond Identity is ushering in the future of identity security, I would highly encourage you to check out our website, beyondidentity.com, where you can get a personalized demo, because these things look really cool, right? And then when it actually becomes real is when rubber meets road and we're able to kind of give you a personalized demo. So once again, thank you so much for joining all of us. My name is Jing, Nikhil, Colton, and Harry. You can find all of us on the internet. We all have internet presences. Some of us lean more LinkedIn and some of us are more Twitter, Blue Sky. I'll let you figure out who is who. And we hope to see you on the other side for a personalized demo at beyondidentity.com.
Hi, I'm Maddie Kelly. I'm the graphic designer and brand manager at Beyond Identity. My process when we started the rebrand included a lot of listening and observing. I've been listening and observing here for 4 years, and so I've had a lot of time to do that and think about how I would take the company visually when I got the chance to. Really, all of it is rooted in our mission and our values and our product vision. So that served as a compass throughout the entire project. And I really just explored a lot of different visual avenues and refined and worked at it until it felt bold and timeless and like it reflected who we are. In our old logo, we had a check mark on the Y, and it didn't really make a lot of sense for that to be there. With the new logo, I wanted it to feel like you're accomplishing something. Like there's energy and momentum in our logo and a boldness that I wanted to capture. My hope is that the visual identity reflects the strength of our product and the conviction of our mission here.